Hello, family. Welcome to Stories with Pablo. Please subscribe and leave us a like. It means the world to us. Also, leave us a comment and share this video with your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you for doing so. The restaurant pulsed with a warm hum of conversation, glasses clinking, knives striking porcelain. Dim lights glowed against the polished wood panels, and the air was thick with the scent of piri-piri prawns, grilled lamb, and the faint sweetness of a marrowless spill from a careless pour. Johannesburg at night could feel like a theater, and tonight, the stage was a private dining room at the Merrill House, one of the city's most exclusive establishments. Daniel Okoro adjusted the cuff of his navy suit, fingers brushing the heavy silver watch on his wrist. The watch was his one indulgence, a gift to himself after the first profitable year of his logistics company. At 36, he had made it further than most men from Hillbrow ever dreamed. But tonight, as he leaned back against the leather seat, he felt a hollow undercurrent. Success in Johannesburg was fragile. One step forward could mean 2 steps back, depending on who sat across from you. Across from him, Chi Adebayo lounged like a king. Chi, or Kai, as everyone called him, had charisma that could fill any room. His wide grin flashed gold when he laughed, his cologne wrapped around him like an aura, and his voice rolled smooth, laced with Nigerian swagger despite having lived in South Africa since his teens. He and Daniel had grown up like brothers, bonded by shared hunger, street hustles, and dreams of something better. But in the last decade, Kai's path had diverged into nightclubs, political handshakes, and whispers of shady deals. Tonight, Kai had insisted they meet. "A man like you doesn't celebrate alone, Danny boy," Kai had said, clapping his shoulder earlier. "A contract like yours? We drink for that." The contract. Daniel tried to ignore the way his stomach knotted at the thought. Months of negotiations had finally secured him a deal with a mining conglomerate, promising steady revenue and visibility. But it also meant enemies. In South Africa, wealth and power drew attention like blood in water. A bottle of French champagne popped with a sharp crack, interrupting his thoughts. The waiter, a young woman with sharp cheekbones and eyes like a hawk, poured the golden liquid into crystal flutes. Her name tag read Elena. Her uniform was crisp, but her hands moved with the precision of someone who had worked long enough to notice everything. Kai raised his glass high, his gold bracelet sliding down his wrist. "To Daniel," he boomed, his voice carrying across the room despite the heavy oak door. "My brother, my partner, the man who proved that Joburg streets may be rough, but they breed diamonds. Drink up, Danny." Daniel felt the heat of attention, other diners peeking in through the frosted glass. He forced a smile, lifting his glass. But just as the rim touched his lips, a voice cut through the air, sharp as a blade. "Stop." It was Elena, the waiter. Her tray clattered as she thrust out a hand, eyes wide with urgency. "Don't drink. It's poisoned." For a split second, silence strangled the room. Daniel froze, the glass trembling inches from his mouth. Kai blinked, then burst into laughter, the sound echoing unnaturally. "Elena," he said smoothly, drawing out her name, "you've been watching too many dramas on Netflix. Poison? Here? You think we're in some mafia movie." But Elena didn't back down. Her chest heaved, her voice steady. "I saw him pour something into that glass. A small vial, clear liquid. I swear it on my mother's life." Gasps rippled from nearby tables. Daniel set the glass down carefully, his throat suddenly dry. His eyes darted to Kai. Kai's grin had not wavered, but his eyes, for a flicker of a second, hardened, flat and sharp. "Danny," he said, his tone turning softer, coaxing. "You know me. Since boys. You think I'd ever harm you." Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. He remembered the nights he and Kai had shared one loaf of bread, splitting it between them while laughing about the future. He remembered the fights Kai had pulled him out of, the debts Kai had once paid for him. But he also remembered the rumors, Kai's name whispered in connection to disappearances, to betrayals. Elena stepped closer, voice trembling but resolute. "If I'm wrong, then test it. Let him drink from it." All eyes swung to Kai. For the first time all evening, his smile faltered. That was a moment the room fractured, trust against doubt, loyalty against fear. Daniel stared at the bubbling champagne, his reflection warped in its golden fizz. His hand ached from gripping the stem of the glass. Chi leaned forward, laughter gone, his voice low and dangerous. "Careful, Danny. You don't let servants out distrust between brothers. That's the oldest trick in the book." Elena flinched but held her ground. Her dark eyes locked onto Daniel's. "You drink that, and you die. Choose what you believe." The hum of Johannesburg nightlife carried faintly through the window, laughter, taxes, music. But inside the Merrill house, silence roared. Daniel realized that whichever choice he made, to trust Chi or the stranger, his life would never be the same again. And with trembling fingers, he pushed the glass away. The restaurant pulsed with the warm hum of conversation, glasses clinking, knives striking porcelain. Dim lights glowed against the polished wood panels, and the air was thick with the scent of piri-piri prawns, grilled lamb, and the faint sweetness of a Merrill spill from a careless pour. Johannesburg at night could feel like a theater, and tonight the stage was the private dining room at the Merrill House, one of the city's most exclusive establishments. Daniel's heart hammered so loudly he could hear it in his ears. He pushed the glass away, sliding it across the white tablecloth. The golden fizz caught the dim light, mocking in its beauty. "Then no one drinks it," he said finally. Chi's gaze locked on him, unreadable, before his lips curved back into that too-wide smile. "Fine. No one drinks." He clinked his untouched glass against the table and set it aside. But the damage was done. Suspicion hung in the air like smoke, and Daniel felt its weight pressing into his chest. Moments later, the restaurant manager arrived, alerted by the commotion. A rotund man with a gleaming bald head, he shuffled in with forced politeness. "What seems to be the issue?" Before Daniel could speak, Elena jumped in. "Sir, I believe a drink was tampered with. This man," she pointed at Chi, "poured something into Mr. Okoro's glass." The manager's face blanched. Poison in his establishment? The scandal alone could ruin them. He glanced nervously at Daniel, then at Chi. Chi chuckled, shaking his head. "My brother here is celebrating, and now your staff are making up stories. Do I look like I carry poison? Eh? You see poison in my pockets." He spread his arms wide, mockingly inviting inspection. Elena's voice cracked with frustration. "Check the CCTV. I saw it with my own eyes." Daniel felt his palms dampen. CCTV. If it showed nothing, Elena would look delusional. If it showed something. The manager cleared his throat. "Perhaps we take this to a quieter place, eh? We don't want to disturb our other guests." But it was too late. The other guests were already watching with rapt attention, phones subtly raised. Somewhere, someone was filming. Daniel leaned toward Chi, lowering his voice. "If you want me to believe you, then let them check the cameras. If you're clean, then—" Chi's eyes flashed, sharp and cold. For the briefest moment, Daniel saw beneath the mask, not charm, not brotherhood, but calculation. Then the smile returned. "Brother," Chi said, clapping him on the shoulder with heavy familiarity. "Always so suspicious. But fine. Let them check." Elena exhaled in relief. The next 20 minutes passed in taut silence as the manager disappeared with 2 staff members to review the footage. Elena stood near the wall, arms folded tight, every muscle coiled. Daniel sat motionless, his thoughts spiraling. What if Chi had really tried to poison him? And if so, why? He remembered a conversation months ago. Chi had pressed him to bring him in on the mining deal. "We started together, Danny." Chi had said, "Voice Silky, what's yours is mine." But Daniel had refused. Clean contracts didn't mix well with Chi's kind of influence. And now, this. The door creaked open. The manager stepped back inside, pale as paper. His eyes darted from Daniel to Chi, then to Elena. We should call the police." The room fell silent. Elena closed her eyes briefly, as if thanking some unseen force. Daniel's stomach twisted. Chi sat very still, then slowly rose to his feet, his smile gone. "Careful," Chi said, his voice low, dangerous. "You don't know who you're accusing." The manager swallowed hard. "The footage is clear. You poured something into the glass." Gasps rose again from the onlookers. Daniel's heart lurched. Kai turned to him, eyes burning. You believe them over me? After everything? Daniel couldn't answer. His mouth was dry, words stuck in his throat. That was when the sound of sirens pierced the air outside, growing louder by the second. Johannesburg police were on their way, and Daniel realized, with a sinking dread, that his life had just changed forever. The sirens grew louder until their shrill wail pressed against the windows of the Marilla house. Diners who moments before had been sipping cocktails were now pressed against the frosted glass, trying to catch a glimpse of the drama. For a city where headlines often mix corruption, betrayal, and violence, nothing thrilled like the sight of men in suits about to be dragged into scandal. The restaurant's double doors swung open with force. 2 uniformed officers entered first, their reflective vests bright against the dim interior. Behind them followed a detective in plain clothes, a tall, wiry man with close-cropped hair and a sharp gaze that swept the room like a searchlight. His badge flashed briefly as he pulled it from his pocket. Detective Themba Mokina, Johannesburg Metro, he announced. His voice was calm, measured, but carried authority. We received a report of attempted poisoning. Who made the call? The manager stepped forward, hands twisting nervously. I did, detective. The CCTV shows. Mokina held up a hand. We'll get to that. First, I need to know who is who. His gaze landed on Daniel, on Kai, on Elena. The triangle of tension was unmistakable. Elena spoke first, her voice tight but steady. It was him, she said. Pointing directly at Kai, he poured something into Mr. Okoro's glass. I saw it. Kai scoffed loudly, the sound dripping with derision. Nonsense. This girl, this waitress, is seeking attention. Look at me, detective. Do I look like a criminal? Mokina's eyes narrowed. You'd be surprised what criminals look like. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. All eyes turned to him. Mr. Okoro, Mokina said, pulling a small notebook from his jacket. Do you confirm what the waiter says? Daniel opened his mouth, closed it again. His throat burned with indecision. The truth was, he hadn't seen Kai pour anything. He'd only seen Elena's panic. He faltered. I didn't see it myself. But the cameras. The cameras can be checked at the station, Mokina interrupted. For now, I need statements. Kai slammed a hand against the table, rattling the glassware. This is madness. Do you know who I am? My name opens doors in this city. You think I'd put my brother here in danger? He jabbed a finger toward Daniel. Ask him what I've done for him. Ask him how many times I've stood by him. Daniel's chest tightened. Memories rushed in unbidden. Kai breaking up a street fight when Daniel was 17. Kai slipping him cash for rent when his first business collapsed. Kai laughing, arm around his shoulders, promising they'd rise together. But then came the other memories. Whispered warnings from colleagues, rumors of Kai's involvement in accidents, contracts mysteriously collapsing when Kai circled too close. Detective Mokina studied the 2 men with a predator's patience. Then he turned to Elena. You're sure what you saw? Her chin lifted, defiant. Yes, 100% sure. Mokina gave a curt nod. Then Mr. Adebayo will come with us for questioning. The restaurant erupted in murmurs. Kai shot to his feet, fury blazing in his eyes. This is how you treat me? You take the word of a waitress over mine? This is disrespect. He turned to Daniel, voice breaking with emotion. Danny, tell them I wouldn't do this. Daniel felt the weight of every gaze in the room pressing against him. Elena's eyes pleaded. Kai's eyes demanded. And he, caught between past loyalty and present fear, whispered the only words he could. I don't know what to believe. The police station smelled of disinfectant and old paper. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a harsh glare on scuffed tile floors. The waiting area buzzed with low voices, the occasional outburst from someone dragged in off the streets. Daniel sat on a hard plastic chair, head in his hands. Elena sat beside him, her uniform rumpled from the long night, but her back straight. Across the room, behind glass, Kai was visible in an interrogation room, pacing, gesturing wildly, his mouth moving fast. 2 officers sat opposite him, stone-faced. You should go home, Elena murmured. "You look like you haven't slept in days." Daniel gave a humorless laugh. "It's been one night. One night like this can feel like years." He turned to study her. Under the harsh lighting, she looked younger than he'd thought, maybe late 20s. Her skin was smooth, but her eyes carried an old heaviness, the kind that came from seeing too much too soon. "Why did you say something?" he asked quietly. "You could have stayed silent. No one would have blamed you." Her lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment she didn't answer. Then finally she said, "Because my brother died from poison." Daniel blinked. "Elena." She cut him off. Different city, different time. He was 19. Wrong people, wrong company. They said it was food poisoning. But I knew someone wanted him gone. And no one listened to me. She met Daniel's gaze, fire burning in her eyes. I wasn't going to let it happen again. Not when I saw it with my own eyes. Daniel leaned back, stunned. The pieces shifted in his mind. Her urgency, her certainty, the way her voice hadn't shaken even when the entire room turned on her. Before he could respond, Detective Mokina emerged from the interrogation room. He motioned for Daniel to follow. Inside, the air was thick. Chi sat slouched now, his earlier fire dim but not extinguished. His eyes darted to Daniel, dark with betrayal. "You," Chi hissed, "you let them drag me in here like a criminal." Daniel swallowed hard. "Chi, don't Chi me. After everything. Danny, after all the blood and sweat I gave for us." His voice rose, echoing against the sterile walls. "You let a stranger come between us." Detective Mokina cleared his throat. "Mr. Adebayo, enough. This isn't a family dispute." He turned to Daniel. "We have the footage. It shows Mr. Adebayo slipping something into your glass. We'll send it to forensics. But," he sighed, "proving intent will be harder. For now, we can only hold him on suspicion." Daniel's stomach twisted. Proof, evidence, courts. The whole machinery of justice spun slowly, and in the cracks, men like Chi wriggled free. Chi leaned forward, voice low and venomous. "Brother, you better decide where you stand. Because if you stand against me, I swear." "Enough," Mokina snapped. But Daniel had already heard the threat, and it sank into his bones like ice. By dawn, Chi had been escorted to a holding cell. Daniel stood outside the station, the chill morning air biting his skin. Elena lingered nearby, arms folded, watching the horizon turn gold over Johannesburg's jagged skyline. "You're not safe," she said quietly. Daniel gave a hollow laugh. "Funny. I thought winning that contract made me safer. Gave me power." "Power makes you a target," Elena replied. He glanced at her, the words lodging deep. She was right. In South Africa, wealth was both shield and bait, and tonight had proved how fragile his shield really was. The sun climbed higher, spilling light over the city that was just beginning to wake. Taxis honked, vendors called out, life moved on as if nothing had happened. But for Daniel, everything had changed. The friend he once trusted more than family had tried to kill him, and now he had to decide what to do next. The cell block at Johannesburg Central Prison was built of concrete and secrets. Every corner smelled faintly of sweat and disinfectant, and the echo of boots striking the floors carried like distant thunder. But even here, amid the hum of electricity and the clank of keys, Chi Adebayo carried himself like a king in exile. He leaned against the bars of his cell, gold chain glinting in the fluorescent light. His smile too smooth to belong in a place like this. Guards looked away when he passed. Inmates made space for him in the yard. Even locked behind steel, Chi was not contained. He was plotting. Daniel Okoro felt it. Sitting in his office high above Santon, with glass walls reflecting the sprawling city, he could not shake the sensation of Chi's presence, invisible but invasive, like smoke under a closed door. The newspapers screamed headlines. "Businessman survives poisoning attempt." Chi Adebayo, hero or villain. Rising entrepreneur Daniel Okoro at the heart of scandal. Reporters stalked him outside his office, cameras flashing as though he were already guilty of something. Business partners hesitated, whispered behind boardroom doors. Deals that had once come easy now carried long silences and nervous glances. Money still flowed, but the confidence behind it cracked. Elena shifted uncomfortably in the chair across from him. She wasn't dressed in her Maryland House uniform today. Instead, she wore a simple blouse and jeans, her braids tied back, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She had never been in a space like this before. The skyline glittering beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, the office too cold with its chrome edges and polished surfaces. "You called me here," she said softly. "Why?" Daniel closed the blinds, shutting out the city, shutting out the world. He toned, shoulders heavy, eyes shadowed. "Because I need someone I can trust," he said. She blinked. "And you think that's me? I know what you did for me that night. You had no reason to. You could have walked away. You didn't." His voice cracked slightly. "Everyone else around me is either afraid of Chi or bought by him. You're not." Elena's gaze lingered on him. "You think that makes me safe to trust. It makes you honest." She gave a faint laugh, shaking her head. Honesty is a dangerous currency in the city. Detective Mokina had warned Daniel. Chi has long arms. Don't think prison walls mean safety. And Mokina was right. Already, strange things were happening. A car tailing Daniel on his way home. Anonymous calls at odd hours. Breathing heavy on the other side. His accountant flagged an unusual transfer attempt. Traced back to a shell company with Chi's fingerprints. Most chilling of all, a note slipped under Daniel's office door one morning. Scrawled in rough ink. "Brotherhood never breaks. You owe me." Daniel had stared at it until the ink blurred, rage and fear battling inside him. "What do you want from me?" Elena asked. Daniel hesitated. The words fell heavy, but he forced them out. "Help me find out why he did it. What his real plan was. He wasn't just trying to kill me. Chi is bigger than that. I need to know who he's working with, who gave him the poison, who is covering for." Elena frowned. "And you think a waitress and a businessman can do what the police can't? The police are bound by rules. Chi plays outside them." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Elena sighed. "If I say yes, we'll both be targets." Daniel met her gaze. "We already are." They started with the footage. Mokina allowed them to view additional angles from the restaurant that hadn't gone public. The grainy images showed Chi receiving a small envelope from a man in a gray suit in the bathroom corridor minutes before the toast. The man's face was blurred, never turning fully to camera. Elena leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "I know that walk. That tilt of the head. You know him. Not by name, but he comes to Maryland House often. Always sits in the back, never eats much. Talks on his phone in hushed tones. The staff whisper that is connected. Politics, maybe." Mokina jotted notes, but Daniel's stomach sank. Politics. That explained the hesitation in the air, the caution, the silence around Chi's arrest. This wasn't just about brotherhood. It was about power webs stretching into parliament, into ministries. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He dreamed of Chi's voice, taunting him. "You think this is about poison? You think too small. Danny, I'm playing the long game. And in the long game, loyalty is the only coin that matters." He woke drenched in sweat, heart racing. Beside his bed, his phone buzzed with a new message. A photo of his mother, sitting on a veranda in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, smiling, unaware the picture had been taken. The caption, "Keep silent." By morning, Daniel's resolve hardened. He called Elena. "They've crossed the line," he said. "We?" she replied. "Yes, we. You said honesty is dangerous. But if we don't dig deeper, they'll bury us alive." She was silent for a long time. Then, "Where do we start?" They traced the man in the gray suit. Elena remembered a name she'd overheard from staff chatter, Bonga. Detective Mokina did some digging, cross-referencing known associates, government tender contracts, social clubs. The name matched. Bongani Dlamini, special advisor to a powerful minister in Pretoria. Too close to touch, Mokina warned. If you go after him directly, you'll disappear before you get answers. But Elena's stubborn fire refused to dim. Then we watch. We wait. We learn his patterns. So they did. For days, Elena trailed him discreetly, blending into the background with a scarf over her hair, carrying notebooks like a student. Daniel paid for cars with tinted windows, stayed low in the back seat as they followed. They saw Bonga at upscale clubs in Rosebank, at discreet meetings in quiet cafes, at one point handing a sealed folder to a man whose license plates traced back to a defense contractor. The pieces didn't align yet, but the picture was forming. Chi wasn't just plotting against Daniel. He was entangled in something far bigger. One evening, after another long day of shadowing, Daniel and Elena sat in a small Soweto diner, plates of pap and stew between them. "You know what scares me the most?" Daniel asked quietly. Elena shook her head. "That I still miss him," he confessed. "Chi, the brother I thought I had. We grew up together, shared secrets, shared dreams. Part of me still wants to believe there's a version of him who wouldn't have done this." Elena's expression softened. Missing who he was doesn't mean excusing who he is. He met her gaze. For the first time, he felt she truly saw the conflict tearing him apart. But before he could speak, his phone buzzed. Another message. A video this time. Chi, in his cell, smiling straight into the camera. "Danny boy," his voice oozed, "keep poking your nose where it doesn't belong, and your little waitress friend here might not make it home one night." The video ended with Chi laughing, a sound that echoed in Daniel's chest long after the screen went dark. That was the moment Daniel understood. This was no longer about survival. It was about choosing sides, and the cost of choosing wrong would be blood. The rain fell hard that evening, streaking against the windows of Daniel's penthouse apartment in Santon. The glass skyscrapers outside were blurred, the neon lights bleeding into rivers of color. Inside, the silence was heavy, broken only by the occasional vibration of Daniel's phone, as yet another journalist sent another request for comment. He ignored them all. Elena sat at the dining table, a mug of rooibos tea cooling in her hands. She stared at the dark liquid as though searching for answers. Daniel, pacing across the room, felt the storm inside him matching the one outside. "Everywhere I turn, it's Chi," he muttered. "Even behind bars, he moves faster than I can think." Elena's eyes flicked up. "That's because prison doesn't scare him. It's just another board in his game." At that same moment, Chi sat in his cell, cross-legged on the thin mattress, a smirk curling his lips. A small transistor radio crackled in the corner, playing muffled jazz. Opposite him, another inmate, a wiry man with tattoos running down his arms, leaned forward, listening closely. "You'll get what you want," the inmate promised, voice low. "The guard's on your payroll already. Tomorrow, the phone goes in. You'll speak to whoever you need." Chi's laugh was soft, dangerous. "Good, because patience may be a virtue, but power is in movement, and I never stop moving." Back in Santon, Daniel's phone finally rang with a name he couldn't ignore, Detective Themba Mokina. "Okoro," the detective's voice rumbled. "We need to meet. Not at the station. Too many years. Somewhere quiet." Daniel frowned. "What happened?" "I've got something. About Chi Dlamini. Come to Vilakazi Street, Orlando West. 2 hours." The line clicked dead. Elena raised an eyebrow. "Do you trust him?" Daniel hesitated. "I don't know, but he's all we've got." Vilakazi Street at night buzzed with life. Tourists still snapping pictures at Mandela House. Vendors selling roasted corn. Music drifting from taverns. But in the shadows of a dimly lit cafe at the far end, Mokina waited. His usual sharp composure was strained, his shirt rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. He motioned them inside quickly. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked. Mokina lowered his voice. "I've been digging into Bongani Dlamini. He's not just a political advisor. He's a fixer for a syndicate, contracts, security, influence. And Chi? He's their golden boy. Charismatic, ruthless, untouchable. They wanted you out, Daniel. Chi volunteered to handle it." Elena's face paled. "Why? Why Daniel?" Mokina's gaze hardened. "Because Daniel is on the brink of landing the Gorting transport contract. Billions in infrastructure. Whoever controls it controls half the province's arteries. Chi wanted it. When you outshone him, he decided loyalty was expendable." Daniel's stomach churned. All his life he had believed his rise was merit, hard work, persistence. Now he realized it was also luck. Luck that Kai hadn't decided to knife him in the back sooner. Mokina leaned closer. Listen carefully. Kai won't rot in that cell. His trial's a formality. The syndicate has judges in their pockets. If you want to survive, you have to gather evidence, real evidence, of their network. Expose them before they bury you. Elena's voice trembled. And if we fail, the detective's jaw tightened. Then you'll both end up like the others who tried. Forgotten. The weight of his words followed them back through the buzzing streets. Daniel's mind spun. Evidence? How? Against men who lived in shadows, traded favors like currency, erased trails with a phone call? In the back of the car, Elena finally broke the silence. Do you believe him? Daniel's eyes were fixed on the passing streetlights. I have no choice. The next day, Daniel attended a business breakfast at a luxury hotel in Rosebank. The event was crawling with politicians, entrepreneurs, journalists. He moved through the crowd with practiced charm, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries. But his eyes weren't on the speeches or the buffet. They were on Bongani Dlamini. The man in the gray suit stood near the back, surrounded by a small circle of men who looked more like bodyguards than businessmen. He was calm, unhurried, sipping sparkling water. Daniel studied him, memorizing the details, the smooth way he avoided cameras, the casual gestures that masked authority, the way others leaned closer when he spoke. This was power. Not loud, not flashy. Quiet, insidious, everywhere. When Dlamini's gaze finally swept across the room and landed on Daniel, a faint smile touched his lips. Not warmth, but recognition. Daniel's blood ran cold. That night, Elena showed up at Daniel's apartment with a folder. "What's this?" he asked. She placed it on the table. The staff at Merrill House talk more than they realize. I've been listening, writing things down. Who visits, who pays, who whispers in corners. Dlamini's name came up more than once. And not just his. There are others. Contractors, middlemen, even one parliament member. Daniel flipped through the pages. Handwritten notes, times, snippets of overheard conversations. Crude, but it was something. You've been risking your job doing this, he said quietly. She shrugged. I've risked more for less. Their eyes met. In that moment, Daniel saw not just a waitress dragged into his storm, but a woman forged in fire long before he knew her. Meanwhile, in his cell, Kai finally had his phone. He sat on his mattress, whispering into it with a grin. Bonga, my brother, the pieces are moving. Okoro's digging, but let him dig. The deeper he goes, the quicker he'll find the grave he belongs in. Just make sure the contract doesn't leave our hands. And when I walk out of here, Johannesburg will remember who owns her veins. A pause. Then Kai's smile widened. Yes, start with a waitress. Break her spirit, and Daniel will follow. 2 days later, Elena's landlord knocked on her door. He held a folded eviction notice. I'm sorry, Lena, he said, avoiding her eyes. Your rent's been paid every month, but the building's been sold. The new owner says your lease is void. You have to be out by Friday. Her chest tightened. She knew this wasn't coincidence. This was Kai's hand, reaching out, squeezing. When she told Daniel, his anger was sharp, immediate. He's targeting you now. I won't let him. You can't protect me from everything, she said quietly. I can try. Detective Mokina brought new intel. A shipment arriving at Durban Harbor, disguised as construction supplies. The manifest tied back to one of Dlamini's shell companies. The whisper said inside the crates were chemicals, the kind used in poisons, the kind Kai's glass had nearly carried to Daniel's lips. If we intercept this, Mokina said, we expose them. But we'll need proof, Daniel countered. Photos, documents, something undeniable. Mokina's face was grim. That means someone has to be there. Daniel's eyes shifted to Elena. He couldn't ask it, but she saw it in his silence. I'll go, she said simply. No, his voice was fierce. It's too dangerous. She tilted her head. You think they'll suspect a waitress snooping around? You'll be watched. I won't. Daniel's fists clenched. He hated that she was right. The night at Durban Harbor was thick with mist. Cargo cranes loomed like giants, the air heavy with a scent of salt and oil. Elena moved with quiet steps, camera hidden in her jacket, heart pounding like a drum. From the shadows, Daniel and Mokina watched through binoculars. There, the gray-suited figure of Bongani Dlamini, overseeing the unloading. Crates marked steel reinforcement bars stacked on pallets. Men with military precision guiding forklifts. Too organized, too clean. Elena slipped closer, crouched behind containers. She raised the camera, snapping photos as one crate was pried open. Inside, not steel, rows of sealed canisters, labeled with chemical codes that made Mokina curse under his breath. Proof. Elena's hands shook as she snapped again, but then a flashlight beam swept across the yard. "Hey!" a voice barked. She froze. Daniel's chest seized. "They've seen her." Kai's voice echoed in his memory. "Break his spirit, and Daniel will follow." Daniel lunged forward, instinct battling reason. Mokina grabbed his arm. "No, you'll blow it all." But all Daniel could see was Elena, cornered by men who killed without hesitation, her courage about to cost her everything. The long game was in motion, and now it was Daniel's turn to move. The following morning, Durban woke under a sky the color of tarnished steel. The air carried a strange heaviness, as though the city itself anticipated blood. Daniel Okoro stood in the narrow balcony of his cousin's safe house overlooking the restless streets, cigarette smoke curling between his fingers. He hadn't smoked in years, but last night had torn open something primal inside him. Behind him, Elena sat cross-legged on the floor, her injured wrist bound, the bruise still fresh and angry. She had been quiet since they escaped the harbor, her face pale from exhaustion but her eyes sharpened with a new kind of fury. "We should have killed Dlamini," she said suddenly, her voice startling in the silence. Daniel turned, as crumbling at his fingertips. "And what then? His death doesn't end this. It multiplies it. Another will rise. The syndicate doesn't bleed from one cut." Her gaze lifted to his. "Then we cut deeper." Mokina, who had been leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, finally spoke. "Cutting deeper is exactly what they want you to do. You strike too hard, too openly, and they'll use it to paint you as a criminal. Trust me, Daniel, I've seen men swallow it whole because they didn't know when to stop." Daniel crushed a cigarette in an ashtray. "And what do you suggest? We wait while they move shipments across the coast? While Kai sits in a cell and pulls strings like a king. They nearly killed her last night. Next time, it won't be nearly." Mokina's expression was unreadable. "You want truth? Someone tipped them off. That's why they were waiting at the harbor." Elena's head jerked up. "What?" "Think about it," Mokina said. "We kept the plan tight. Just us. No leaks. Unless," his gaze shifted to Daniel, "unless someone on your side of the circle is playing both ends." Daniel's stomach clenched. He thought of the calls he made before the harbor, the cousin who secured this safe house, the men from his past who still circled him like vultures. Trust had always been currency, and it was now running bankrupt. By afternoon, the safe house was no longer safe. Daniel insisted they move to the hills outside Pietermaritzburg, far from the coast and the eyes of syndicate watchers. The road wound through sugarcane fields, the storks whispering secrets as they drove. Elena sat in the passenger seat, her silence heavy. At last she spoke. "You don't trust Mokina, do you?" Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. "He's saved my life twice. But he's a cop. Cops in this country sometimes serve two masters." "And what about your cousin, the one who gave us the safe house?" Daniel exhaled through his teeth. "Sypho's loyal, but loyalty bends when money talks." "Or when fear does," Elena added. The truth of it sat between them, thick as smoke. When they reached the hills, they found shelter in an abandoned farmhouse, its roof sagging, windows shattered. But it offered isolation, and that was its own kind of safety. That night, as rain battered the tin roof, Daniel sat with Elena by a small fire. Shadows danced against her face, softening the hardness in her eyes. "Why do you keep fighting?" she asked. "You could walk away. Leave Kai to rot. Leave Dlamini to choke on his empire. Why put yourself in the middle?" Daniel's jaw tightened. Because this isn't just about me. Kai was once my brother. We grew up together in Soweto, sharing bread, sharing blood. If I let him destroy everything and everyone, what does that make me? Elena studied him, her voice quieter now. Maybe it makes you free. He looked at her then, and for the first time, he saw not just a fire that had kept her alive, but the fatigue, the fractures beneath her strength. She was carrying her own ghosts. Elena, he began, but the sound of engines outside cut him short. Daniel leapt to his feet, pistol drawn. Mokina burst in from the back room, weapon ready. They found us. Headlights pierced through Rain Street glass. The firefight erupted with brutal speed. Bullets tore through the rotting wood, splinters raining down. Daniel dragged Elena behind the fireplace as Mokina returned fire through the window. Too many. Mokina shouted. Daniel cursed, eyes darting. There's a back exit. Go. They slipped into the storm, the night swallowing them. The rain drenched their faces, mud sucking at their boots. Gunfire echoed as shadows advanced. Mokina covered them, barking orders. But as they reached the tree line, Daniel glanced back and froze. 2 men had cornered Mokina near the doorway. Muzzle flashes lit the night. 1 man fell. The other jammed a blade into Mokina's side. Mokina! Daniel roared. But Mokina raised his hand, blood already dark on his shirt. Go! Don't stop. Elena pulled at Daniel's arm. We can't save him. He knows it. The weight of betrayal, of trust bleeding out into the mud, nearly broke him. But Daniel forced himself to run, dragging Elena into the forest. They stumbled through the darkness until their lungs screamed. Finally, they collapsed under a jacaranda tree, the purple blossoms falling like rain. Elena pressed her forehead to her knees. We're running in circles, Daniel. They're everywhere. It's like the whole country's hunting us. Daniel leaned back against the trunk, his chest heaving. He thought of Mokina, of Sifo, of every ally who had slipped through his fingers. Each loss was a stone tied to his ankles, dragging him down. We can't keep running, he said at last. His voice was hoarse, but steady. It ends with Kai. Elena lifted her head. He's still in prison. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Prison is exactly where he wants to be. Safe, untouchable, but walls can fall. The following day, news broke across South African media. Detective Mokina had been killed in a gunfight tied to organized crime. The report spun him as a rogue officer working with criminals, his death a necessary containment. Daniel hurled the newspaper across the field. They erased him. They turned him into a villain. Elena retrieved the paper, scanning it. And they'll do the same to you if you're not careful. They already are, Daniel muttered. But something in the article snagged his attention. A single line buried in bureaucratic jargon. Investigations into Adebayo's activities continue. Kai's name, still circulating, still powerful, even behind bars. That night, as they huddled in the farmhouse ruins, Daniel received a call on a burner phone he hadn't used in weeks. The voice on the other end was smooth, mocking. Daniel, brother. His blood ran cold. Kai. Elena stiffened at the name. I hear you've been making waves, Kai continued. Running through the night, dodging bullets, playing the hero. But heroes don't last long in this country. They become martyrs. Oh, ghosts. Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. You set me up at the harbor. You leaked the farmhouse. How many more bodies do you want? Kai's laugh was low, sharp. As many as it takes. You should know by now, survival is the only loyalty. And you, my brother, are not surviving. The line clicked dead. Daniel lowered the phone slowly. His reflection stared back from the shattered window. Tired eyes, blooded knuckles, a man hollowed by betrayal. He turned to Elena. It ends with Kai one way or another. She studied him, her face pale in the firelight. And if ending it means ending yourself. Daniel's silence was answer enough. The rain eased by dawn, leaving the air sharp and raw. Daniel loaded his pistol with quiet precision. Elena watched him, the unspoken truth heavy between them. Then I'm going with you, she said. No. Yes. Elena. She cut him off. If you face him alone, you'll lose. If you take me with you, Maybe we both lose, but at least it won't be in silence. Their eyes met, and something unbroken passed between them. Not hope, not safety, but solidarity. For the first time since the poisoned glass at Merrill House, Daniel allowed himself the faintest smile. Then let's finish this. The maximum security wing of Westville Prison was a fortress carved into concrete and wire, where South Africa's most dangerous men traded silence like currency. For weeks, Daniel had circled its perimeter in his mind, replaying every choice that had led him here. The poisoned glass, Elena's warning, Mokina's death, and Kai's voice taunting him through static and distance. Now there was no more circling. Tonight, the path led straight through. They approached under cover of darkness, their battered baccy hidden beneath acacia trees half a kilometer away. The air was cool, the scent of soil sharp after the day's rain. Elena adjusted the pack on her shoulders, the strap digging into her bruise. "You're sure this will work?" Daniel loaded a magazine into his pistol, movements measured. "Mokina left me more than loyalty. He left access codes. They won't hold forever, but long enough." Her eyes searched his face. "And after that? After Kai?" Daniel hesitated. The truth was a knife pressing into his ribs. There was no after, but he forced a smile that never touched his eyes. "We improvise." Elena exhaled, tightening the scarf around her neck. "Then let's improvise." Inside the prison, shadows stretched long across the concrete floor. Guard patrolled in pairs, their boots echoing like drumbeats of authority. Daniel moved like a man born for silence, Elena close at his side. They bypassed checkpoints, slipping through back corridors meant for service staff. Each door opened under Mokina's stolen codes, each hallway tightening like a noose. Finally, they reached the isolation wing, a place where men vanished into themselves. And there, behind reinforced glass and steel, sat Chi Adebayo. Kai was not the boy Daniel remembered, the one with quick laughter and quicker fists, who once climbed rooftops in Soweto with him, chasing dreams too big for their pockets. This man was sharper, leaner, his prison uniform pressed as though he wore a tailored suit. His eyes gleamed with the same dangerous brilliance, but now they were colder, detached. When he saw Daniel, a smile curled his lips. "Brother." Daniel's chest burned the word. "Kai." Kai leaned back on the metal chair, chains rattling at his wrists. "You've come far. Through fire, through blood, and all roads lead back to me." Elena stepped forward. "You poisoned him. You tried to kill him." Kai's gaze flicked to her, amusement dancing in his eyes. "Ah," the waitress with fire in her voice. "You've been his shadow. Brave. But bravery doesn't end wars. Darling, men like us do." Daniel slammed a fist against the table. "Why? After everything, the streets we bled on, the nights we starved together, why would you want me dead?" Kai's smile faded, replaced by a glimmer of something raw. "Because you left me." The words hung heavy. Daniel blinked. "Left you?" "You clawed your way out," Kai spat, his chains clinking as he leaned forward. "Business suits. Deals. Respect. While I took the fall. While I rotted in this cage, you pretended we weren't the same blood. You abandoned me, Daniel, and abandonment is worse than betrayal." Daniel's throat tightened. "You chose this. The syndicate, the violence. We both chose it." Kai snapped. "Don't you dare rewrite history. We were hungry boys who learned that the world respects only those who take. You just put on a different mask." Elena's voice trembled. "So you'd rather destroy him than let him live?" Kai's gaze softened, almost tender. "If he lives free while I'm chained, then yes. Better his blood stain the earth than let him forget me." Silence crashed down. The only sound was a hum of fluorescent lights. Daniel stared at the man he once called brother and saw not just a criminal, but the reflection of his own shadow. The path he might have taken had one decision tilted the other way. "Kai," he said softly, almost pleading, "it doesn't have to end like this. We can end the syndicate. Together." For a heartbeat, Kai's jaw worked. But then he laughed, hollow and sharp. "You still don't get it. There is no end. Syndicates don't die. They adapt. You cut off one head, another grows. The only question is, who controls the beast?" And you think that's you? Daniel asked. Kai's eyes glittered. It could have been us. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights washed the hallway. Elena jumped. Daniel whipped around. What did you do? Kai's grin widened. Did you think I didn't know you were coming? You think I don't own guards even in here? Brother, you walked into my house. Boots thundered down the hall. Guards shouting, guns cocking. Elena grabbed Daniel's arm. We need to move. Kai rose to his feet, chains dragging. His smile cut deep. Run, Daniel. Run like you always do. But no matter how far, you'll never outrun me. They bolted from the isolation wing, alarms wailing in their ears. Guards rounded the corner, weapons raised. Daniel fired back, dragging Elena into cover. Concrete chipped around them, the air stinking of gunpowder. This is suicide. Elena cried. Then let's make it worth it. Daniel shouted. They pushed through corridors, weaving between cell blocks. Prisoners shouted, fists rattling bars, chaos feeding on chaos. A riot was breaking loose, sparked by the scent of freedom. At last they burst into the open yard. Rain poured down, mingling with sweat and blood. A spotlight caught them, blinding. Down on the ground, a voice roared. Elena raised her hands instinctively. Daniel froze, pistol still hot in his grip. And then, through the storm of light and sirens, a single figure stepped forward. Bongani Dlamini, umbrella in hand, calm as death itself. You really should have killed me when you had the chance, he said, voice smooth under the rain. Daniel's blood ran cold. You? Dlamini smiled faintly. Did you think Kai was the only mastermind? He is the heart. I am the hand. And you, Mr. Okoro, are nothing but a loose end. Guards close in. Elena's eyes darted, desperate. Daniel. He turned to her, rain streaming down his face. Go. No, she cried. Yes. His voice cracked, filled with something final. If one of us makes it out, let it be you. Before she could protest, he shoved her toward the riot gates, where prisoners were spilling into the yard, creating a gap. Bullets roared. Daniel spun, firing at guards, his silhouette framed by lightning. Elena's scream was swallowed by the storm as hands dragged her into the chaos. The last thing she saw before the riot swallowed her was Daniel, standing alone against a wall of guns, defiant, unyielding. And then, in a thunderclap of gunfire, he was gone. The riot raged through Westville prison like wildfire, consuming stone and steel with the raw hunger of men who had been caged too long. Sirens howled. Floodlights flickered. The air was thick with rain and smoke, the chorus of boots and shouts echoing like a war. Elena stumbled through the chaos, her lungs burning, her bruised wrist throbbing. Prisoners surged around her, some scrambling for freedom, others thirsting for blood. She clutched at the hands that shoved her forward, half-dragged, half-swept by the tide of bodies. Behind her, the thunder of gunfire still shook the yard. She wanted to turn, to fight her way back, but Daniel's voice tore through her memory. Go. If one of us makes it out, let it be you. Her throat burned with grief, but her legs carried her on. By dawn, the riot was quelled. The prison smoldered in the distance, helicopters circling like vultures. Elena crouched in the cane fields miles away, her body shivering under wet clothes, mud streaked on her cheeks. She had escaped, but at a price that hollowed her chest. Daniel was gone. She had felt it in her bones even before the guns fell silent. And yet, in the hours that followed, the city buzzed with stories. Rumors whispered through taverns and taxis that Daniel Okoro had died a hero, taking down God before the bullets claimed him. Others said he had been executed by Dlamini himself. Some swore they saw him still standing in the yard, smoke curling from his pistol, unbroken until the very end. Elena clung to the last version. 2 days later, she walked through Durban's inner city, hood pulled low. Posters plastered the walls, newspapers shouted from vendors. Riot at Westville, syndicate link suspected. Detective's death tied to crime ring. Businessman Okoro among casualties. Every headline was another knife. She had no place to go. Her apartment was compromised, the safe house gone, Mokina dead, Saifo vanished. And yet, she felt Daniel beside her in every step, in every shadow. The memory of his last look, fierce, unyielding, kept her upright. At night, she found shelter in a boarding house run by an old Zulu woman who asked no questions. Elena lay awake on the thin mattress, replaying every moment. The poisoned glass, the harbor, the farmhouse, the prison. She remembered Daniel's hand gripping hers, callous and steady, promising protection even when the world fell apart. She remembered his smile, rare, fleeting, but real, when he finally let himself believe she was more than just collateral. Tears streaked silently down her face. She whispered into the darkness, "You didn't abandon me, not even at the end." But the world outside did not stop. Bongani Dlamini emerged stronger than ever, presenting himself to the press as a savior who quelled the riot. He framed Daniel as a rogue operator tied to Mokina's corruption, spinning lies with the precision of a surgeon. Chi, meanwhile, remained untouchable inside his cell. Though the riots had scarred the prison, he had emerged without a scratch, his reputation only sharper. To his followers, he was no longer just a man. He was legend. And in whispered circles, people began to speak his name with fear and reverence. Adebayo, the king in chains. Elena's rage simmered, a fire she struggled to contain. She wanted to scream Daniel's truth to the world, to stand on rooftops and tear down the lies. But who would listen? A waitress, a survivor, a woman with no evidence? Every road she traced led back to silence. Until one evening, as she walked along the Durban harbor, she heard a voice behind her. "You shouldn't be out here alone." She spun, heart pounding. A man stood there, tall, his face hidden beneath a cap. For a second, her breath caught, the angle of his shoulders, the weight of his stance. Her heart screamed Daniel. But when he looked up, the stranger's eyes were unfamiliar. "I knew him," the man said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "Daniel. He saved my brother in Soweto years ago. People haven't forgotten. You shouldn't either." He handed her a folded piece of paper and vanished into the night. Elena unfolded it with trembling hands. Inside was a name, an address, and 5 words scrawled in a rough hand. "Finish what he started. Live." Weeks bled into months. Elena left Durban, slipping into the folds of Johannesburg, then Cape Town, always one step ahead of the syndicate's eyes. She worked odd jobs under false names, never staying too long. But the fire never left her. In quiet corners of the city, she began to gather whispers, men and women who had suffered under Dlamini's hand, who had lost brothers and sons to Kai's shadow empire. She told them Daniel's story, stripped of lies. She told them how he fought not for power, but for the chance that someone else might breathe free. Slowly, quietly, she built something. Not an army, but a memory. Not a weapon, but a seed. And yet, the tragedy lingered like smoke. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she woke to the sound of gunfire only she could hear. She reached out in the darkness, fingers seeking the hand that once pulled her to safety. But the bed was always empty. Other times, she dreamed of the prison yard, Daniel framed in lightning, rain streaking his face, unbroken until the bullets cut him down. She always woke before the last shot. Perhaps that was mercy. Years later, at a crowded tavern in Johannesburg, Elena overheard 2 men talking. "Remember that Okoro guy? The one in the prison riot?" One said, laughter in his tone. "Yeah, thought he could play a hero. Ended up just another body." Their laughter stabbed her. But then a third man at the table leaned forward. "You're wrong," he said quietly. "He wasn't just another body. He was the only one who stood when everyone else bowed." For the first time in months, Elena smiled. Small, weary, but real. And so the story of Daniel Okoro did not end in victory or glory. It ended in blood and silence, in betrayal and sacrifice. But in the whispers of those who remembered, in the fire that still burned in Elena's heart, his tragedy became more than death. It became warning. It became defiance. And though Kai ruled in chains, and Dlamini thrived in shadows, they could never erase the truth of that night. That one man chose to stand. Thanks for watching Stories with Pablo. Please subscribe and leave us a like. It means a lot to us. You can also share this video with your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you for doing so.